Sometimes people think that earth shattering things need to take place for it to make a significant difference in how you do something. I totally disagree. Let's talk about this, and it has to do with baking. Right back in a minute. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jan. Welcome to another episode of my channel, the Save Money More Jan channel. How you doing today? Happy Friday. I know. It sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah. But not everybody has a Friday on a Friday because some people's Friday could be on a Monday if you see where I'm going with this. But I'm wishing everybody a happy day. Nonetheless, want to jump right into it. This one, action step makes baking much easier. What am I talking about? Since I've been baking more often, it's winter time. I don't mind running my oven a little more often right now as opposed to, let's say, August, right? But I also have been rediscovering the fun that I do have baking. And baking is pretty much a science, and you have to follow certain rules, if you will, as far as the actual oven technique of the baking and the measurements and things of that nature. It's not like cooking, because if you, let's say you want to cook something on top of your stove, let's say like a stir fry, you kind of could wing it, if you will, and eyeball it and stuff like that. I like to eyeball things too, even when I bake, but I follow the rules of measurement when it comes to following the rules of measurement when it comes to baking. But I'll tell you one thing that used to turn me off about baking. And I didn't realize it till one day. One day when I said, you know what, I feel like making whatever bread it was. It was some sort of a quick bread I wanted to make. This was a while ago. And I said, here's what bothers me. And the light bulb went off. It wasn't the bread. Of course, I wanted to make the bread. I enjoyed that bread, right? It was the gathering of. Do you live as a gatherer or do you live as a scatterer? What? Many times, one of the things people go absolutely berserk with is that their stuff is not gathered into one central location. So I've come to the conclusion that a simple thing like a storage container or even a cardboard box would suffice to keep your most frequently used baking items, like things, for example, like baking powder, baking soda, a canister of sugar, a canister of flour, your salt. You see where I'm going with this. Of course, you may want to add more to it. Some of your equipment, okay? For example, it's a great idea to keep your measuring cups, for example, let's say inside of your flour container, or your sugar canister. Measuring cups keep them readily available. In this one box, you could also keep, let's say, a bottle of oil, right? You could also keep, let's say, your Crisco type stuff, shortening, things of that nature. Anything that has to do with a baking project, put it all in the same box. Another thing to consider, of course, to add to that box would be non-stick cooking spray slash baking spray. All right? Yes, yes, and yes. I'm telling you, and like maybe even a standard size mixing bowl and a whisk all in the same box. So next time you want to do a baking project, because what used to frustrate me was the method of what the recipe was so simple. But what I noticed was this jumping around here, there, and everywhere, wasting that same extra time every time I wanted to bake. And then a light bulb went off in my head. I said, Jen, why are you scattering all this when all you need to do is gather all this? How many folks out there are scatterers or gatherers? Do you still always go to like 7 or 8 locations every time you want to bake something? Or like your little spatula, things of that nature. Like, I'm not saying don't keep like another a set of things elsewhere. Keep another set of things in case the other things wear out. But the things that you know that you are most frequently going to use, doesn't it stand to reason to think, you know what? I'm just going to you could get a cute storage container for that. Somewhere where you could just pick up that whole container every time you know you're going to bake something or another and just bring it with you to your workspace, wherever that workspace may be. And people's style of housing and living has changed so very, very much, all right, in the last 15, 20 years. Am I right or am I right? Everybody's life is different. Everybody's situation is different. Not everybody has the big space kind of house. Some people don't even have the decency of space of a full-fledged kitchen in an expensive apartment. You should see what some so-called kitchens look like, for example, in New York City, in expensive neighborhoods. I am not even kidding you. Sometimes people have to be grateful that they actually have a countertop to work with. I'm not kidding. So, making a long story short, everybody's situation is different. But one thing all of us could do, if we enjoy baking, if you enjoy baking at least a few times a month, why not keep those things, those items in easily accessible area in one area? Doesn't even have to be a box. Perhaps you could devote a cabinet in your kitchen. You see where I'm going with this. Everything in one spot. There is no need to keep scattering your stuff. This is what I believe is a big frustration with people. They get fed up with having to look here, there, and everywhere for everything at all times. It really, really, really just doesn't make sense. All right, so enough of that. I want to mention something else to you. This is a reference to my cocoa bread, and I'll be right back in a minute. All right. So as you know, not that long ago, a few weeks back, I made a cocoa bread because I had a hankering for what the local people around here sell as a $4 or $5 chocolate chip muffin. So I said, I bet you I could replicate this recipe, but I didn't want to make it in the form of muffins. I wanted to do it in the form of a loaf. And I did. And it was quite successful, may I tell you. So I made another one in between since that last show. I said, I want to make another one, but I did a trick. When it was completely cooled, the next morning, I did it at night. And I said, leave it overnight, let it cool off, let it get a little more condensed. As a matter of fact, I actually put it in the refrigerator to make it even denser. Then with a sharp knife, here's what I did to stretch out the wealth of this bread. I scored it down the center of the loaf. And then I cut little slices across. And it yielded me, because I went like about 8 or 9 times. I don't remember the exact number. I went about 8 or 9 times, but I times it by 2. And I created about 18 portions, because to me, this is a rich, flavored chocolate flavor. If you ever get a hankering for chocolate, sometimes you don't have to use like to eat a chocolate bar. Sometimes you're just as well having, let's say, a little piece of like a cocoa or chocolate style bread. This time around, I did enter or add chocolate morsels to the recipe, but make sure whatever you do, before you put it inside your mixture, make sure that you roll that in flour, the little morsels, so that the chips do not sink to the bottom. So I poured it halfway before I, baked it. Halfway the batter in the loaf pan, threw in my chocolate chips that were covered with white flour. Then I poured, the remaining mixture on top, batter on top, and then I put a few chocolate chips on the top, just to make it look cute. But I'll tell you one thing, it tasted really cute. I said, this tastes too cute. All right. So I would like to make small portions, and even not just for myself, in case somebody comes over. I already have these little smaller portions cut out and ready to go. And before somebody shows up, I could just like present those little small portions, little slices, so cute, on a serving tray, display tray. I'm telling you, there are ways and there are ways. So let's not be let's not be scatterers of our baking stuff, baking recipe ingredients. Become a gatherer of, put it in one box. It doesn't have to be a fancy box. I don't care if it's a cardboard box, which is the way I did it. And let me tell you something, it works just as well. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate everybody's time. I'm so glad that I rediscovered the fun of baking again. It really is a lot of fun. But I know I'm not ever going to miss again is being a scatterer and looking all over the place, here, there, and everywhere in a repetitive manner all the time. Put everything in a central location. You're going to find yourself a happier baker too. Have an amazing, fantastic day. And don't forget to do what this lady does. Have an amazing, fantastic day. Don't forget to take good care of yourself and your amazing family. Thank you.